Hello, everyone. I'm going to continue our little series on parent-child relationship. This is the third series of the series. This is the third episode. In the first one, I talked about general things. The second one, I talked about the sun-moon relationship. And I hope you did understand that whenever you look at the chart, the aspect relationship between the sun and the moon describes how the child, him or herself, experienced the parents when he or she was young. And the young age is about 4, 5, 6, maybe 7, 8 years old. And after that, of course, it's the MCIC anger that is going to take over as the parental axis. But in early childhood, it's the sun and the moon. And it may not describe how the actual relationship was between the parents, but it certainly describes how the child experienced it. So that's important. So if you listen to that video and then you looked at your children's charts, please don't be offended, okay? Because it simply means that the child's filter conveyed this type of relationship, okay? Each child, each person is a unique universe. And if you want to understand your partner, your children, your next door neighbor, you need to step into their shoes. Otherwise, you won't be able to understand what's going on in their psyche. It's a difficult thing. It's almost impossible to do. There's one vehicle, one key to the process. If you love the other person. Love is the universal door opener, so to speak. That's the only method by which you can actually enter somebody else's world and understand how they work, how they think, what's important to them. That's the only way. Otherwise, you will always understand everything through your own filter, which may be completely different. My world is different than your world, okay? And unless we join in some way, unless we go out of our ways to meet the other person, we won't understand each other. So that's what I can tell you. Okay, today we are going to take a look at the potential relationships we had before this life. Because in past lives, in previous incarnations, just because this time we are mother and son, we could be anything else. We could be a number of different relationships. And those relationships will greatly affect how you treat your child and how your child sees you. And that's the key. If you understand why, what are the undercurrents of that particular relationship? And they always stem in previous relationships. They are really setting the pattern by which you react to what your children do. We mothers, we women, have an advantage because the fetus is growing inside us. So we have a very, very symbiotic relationship with our children. They grow in our wombs, and we can feel how they react to certain things. That is why I always tell my clients and my students when they are pregnant, that please try to be happy during pregnancy. It's very, very difficult because I've been throwing up for 9 months, so it's very, very difficult. But listen to music you love. Yes, you can listen to metal or jazz or whatever if it makes you happy. You will deliver a child who also enjoys those types of music. Eat the foods you like and enjoy. Be with people that you love, and try to live in a way that is harmonious and comfortable for you, because in this way you can diminish stress, and in this way you can enjoy your pregnancy, which is sometimes very easy, sometimes difficult. I didn't like to be pregnant, to tell you the truth. I always felt like in the Alien movie that something is really, a monster is growing in my belly, and I didn't like it. I love my children, so don't get it wrong. I just didn't like to be pregnant. But some women love to be pregnant, and they thrive when they are pregnant. So, and it's only just 9 months, so you can survive it. But as I said, because it's a gradual thing, because it's growing, okay, inside us, we get used to it, okay? We can get even used to our children's moods. We can assess whether he or she likes the type of music we are listening to, or, you know, it's very interesting. If you are attuned to your fetus, your baby inside you, you will have a much better relationship once it's out. Whereas men have a much more difficult issue with this, because obviously they don't have any changes in their physical body. They don't experience the hormonal changes, the discomfort that a growing belly can cause. And of course, this means that they are kind of sometimes even alienated from the whole process. It's very difficult. I mean, I'm telling you, it's difficult for a man to realize that, okay, he fell in love with a young, beautiful woman, and this woman gains 40 pounds, or throws up every day, or is moody, or is crying all the time. Think about it. It's very, very difficult to stand by a woman and try to understand what's going on with her while you don't have any physical changes. And even after delivery, okay, breastfeeding, for instance, and the constant crying of a baby, and getting up at night 6 times, and then trying to be fit and nice and kind and smart and smiley while you are dying of neglect and tired, being tired. So it's not easy. But, and here comes the interesting thing, even from the very first conscious moment when the baby is delivered and looks at you, you will get glimpses what sort of relationship there was between the two of you. It's very important to listen to them, especially when they already start talking, but even before that. So most babies start to talk around year 2. Some of them a little bit earlier, some of them a little bit later. By 3, most children are able to express themselves properly in proper sentences. And the so-called Stargate is open up till 5 years of age, which means that young children are connected to the higher dimensions. They dream, they convey messages, they actually see into those dimensions, they experience things, and they are able to remember. And please pay attention what they say. For instance, my son, when he was 2 years old, he was properly, my older son, he was able to talk in full sentences when he was 2. And he was absolutely angry that I could stay up and he had to go to sleep, or I could watch a movie and he couldn't, or I could go to the supermarket and alone and he couldn't at the age of 2 or 3. Obviously, he thought I was her sister. So we had a sister-brother relationship previously, which very clearly affected how we behave to each other, because I realized this very early on, that, okay, he thinks that I'm his sister. And I sat down and I tried to explain that, no, I'm not your sister, I'm your mother. I showed him pictures of my pregnancy. And he slowly understood, but it took him a couple of years before he accepted that, okay, you're my mother, fine. But it was really like a brother-sister relationship for a long time. And even later on, we had this edge or this flavor of our relationship. Now, that may not be an easy one. Think about it. When you have a brother-sister relationship, you could have sibling rivalry. You could have, there's the issue of who is looking after the other, who is having a say in certain matters, who is playing the role of the authority or the authoritative person. So that all can blur the father, daughter, or son-mother relationship. But that's not a hard one. Usually it's not a difficult one. Then we have all sorts of other potentials, okay? For instance, we could be brothers in arms. We could be brethren, actually. So you have to think about it. Actually, if you want to make, delineate karmic issues, if you want to understand karmic astrology, you need to think in historical terms. You need to know history. It's good to read historical books. It's good to read a lot of mythological books and mythology as such. That's the real history, by the way, because history usually is written by the victor, the winners, and it's always from their perspective. So might be quite different from what actually happened. And the victorious nation always distorts the truth to their benefit, of course. But anyhow, so read those books, listen to podcasts, or look into ages that you are interested. Go to museums. Try to educate yourself, and you will understand the issues much better. So you have to think about the fact that in all times, unnecessary amount of people were absorbed by two institutions. One was the church. So you had many cloisters and monasteries and things like that. That was one. And the other one was the army. And the army wasn't just made up by soldiers, okay? If you had an army of 10,000 soldiers, you had at least 3,000 plus people who were serving the army, cleaners, washerwomen, cooks, whatever. Think about that, okay? That you could actually earn a living by joining an army and helping them as a profession, and also, of course, doctors and nurses and whatever. Think about those. So that was a valid occupation, not just hookers. Okay, yes, they were there too, but they were actually quite a few. Okay, the most of the people were earning honest, decent livings by joining the army. So it means that yes, you could be brothers in arms. You could be a nurse in the army helping someone to heal. Okay, you could be sisters in a monastery, or brothers in a monastery, and all kinds of other relationships. So usually, by the way, you could have, that's the best probably, you could have a child that used to be your grandchild. And, grandchildren have very special relationships with their grandparents. There's a Hungarian saying that the reason is because children come from the light and grandparents go towards the light. But actually, it's very simply because we grandparents have a lot more time. First of all, it's not our responsibility. It's a lot more carefree relationship. Okay, they take the breaths away when you are fed up with them. You spend really valuable and nice time with them, a couple of days or 1 or 2 days a week, a couple of hours a day, and so you can actually have valuable time. You can have you could give all your attention. They can have all your attention, and you are wiser than when you were a parent. So and you are much lighter in many ways. So not as compulsory, or not as excessive compulsive as a grown-up is. Okay, we grandparents can afford to be a lot lighter than parents. So it's a wonderful relationship usually between grandchildren and grandparents. And if a child comes back after such a relationship, that is usually a very easy, very brilliant mother-child relationship. So that's really beautiful. Also, when you have your child as your best friend, so you were best friends in the past and you come back, and those are based on a lot of mutual understanding, a lot of intellectual discourse, a lot of intellectual way of looking at stuff. So that's also quite good for children. And then, of course, you could have a relationship that is a bit more difficult, actually quite difficult, when you have, as a child, your previous spouse or your previous lover. That opens up a whole can of worms. I'm not going to discuss this in details simply because it could be very good and it could be very painful and it could be very strange. Okay, there may be very, very strange urges, which, of course, decency and common sense helps us to subdue, but it's not an easy relationship ever. It could be very loving, but it blurs sometimes the edges, let's put it this way, and it could become very, very difficult and very uncomfortable. But I'm going to talk about one special issue, which is the love triangle issue. And it is quite often happening. There's a mother, a father, and a child who used to be husband, wife, and lover, okay? Or wife, husband, and the lover of the wife. So it doesn't really matter. It's just the spouses and the lover triangle, love triangle. Now, this is a terrible one, I have to tell you. And the reason for that is because obviously these people, the three people, made pure hell of their lives, and mutually, of course, as well, but their own as well. And they simply want to resolve the problem. They want to resolve the issue. Quite often, you will see, even in your circle of friends or acquaintances, that there's this guy who is unable to choose between his wife or ex-wife already and his new lover or new wife. And he's constantly ping-ponging between the two, moving in with one, staying there, feeling happy for a couple of weeks, even months. Then the problems start accumulating. Then he's leaving her and going to the other one, of course. And then they always feel victorious whenever the guy is at their place. And this may go on for decades, actually. Okay, so it's very uncomfortable, very, very degrading in many sense. Okay, and this full of hopes and wishes, and at the same time full of heartbreak and pain. And after such a life, such a very disruptive, emotionally disruptive, and otherwise disruptive life, the three parties may decide that this time they are going to come together, as a father, mother, and baby. Okay, so it's usually the lover who is going to be the baby. The reason why is very simple, because here what they want to reconcile is the wife and the lover, or the two wives, doesn't matter, because they think that the only way to resolve this is unconditional love. And where do you feel unconditional love on the earth plane? Of course, in a child-mother relationship. There's at least, that's the closest to what we call unconditional love. Aside, no, we don't always love our children. This is a very well-kept secret. Not everyone dares to utter it. I do. Okay, I have 35 years of experience with clients, and I saw a lot of different relationships. And I must tell you that not everyone loves his or her child. Now, I know that this is a whole catalog of worms, and I'm not going to discuss it now, but I will prepare a video which you may love or hate. It's still there, and we need to face it. So I'm going to talk about that later on, much later on, because we have other fish to fry here. Anyhow, so what happens here is that the three participants decide to come back as a loving family. And then the woman delivers the baby. It's a baby girl, okay? And the moment the child opens her eyes and looks at the mother, and they have an interaction, and the two souls immediately recognize each other. And this is when the child becomes very angry because all she knows is that here I am. Don't forget that by then we lose our so-called panoramic mind. Okay, so we no longer actually know who we are. All we know is that, yes, I'm here. I want to try this new life. Here's my new incarnation. But of course, I totally forgot about what we decided up there. It seemed like a bright idea. And all of a sudden, I'm faced just after the shock of birth, which is always a shock. Okay, I'm kind of face to face with my rival. And also the mother feels the same way, looks at the child and is unable to love that child immediately. Like there's something there. She cannot explain why, but there's some kind of aminosity between the two. And then they go home, and then the problems start really badly because the mother is unable to breastfeed or unable to understand what the child's needs. The child is constantly crying, okay, constantly, except when she is in the arms of the father. This is something that the mother greatly resents, and it feels hurt by it. And it's a very peculiar situation because the mother tries to be to be a mother, to cater for the baby's needs. The father becomes quite impatient because all he sees is that the child is crying constantly and accuses the mother, like, why can't you be a better mother? Why can't you do this? Why, blah, blah, blah. The mother feels sorry, also hurt, offended deeply, but at the same time, she feels guilty because she can't be a good mother. And if this is not resolved, it's going to be horrible. Okay. Usually, what happens is that the lover and the two lovers, okay, get much closer. They exclude the other one. The other person feels hurt. There's a terrible lost paradise syndrome here because before the baby came, the parents were very happy. After the baby arrived, the mother feels inadequate, hurt, offended, jealous. All the bad feelings are there, and they can't resolve it. Sometimes karmic readings help. So sometimes when you realize that this is the issue, and you explain this to people, then intelligent couples are able to work on this. They understand that the child is still a child, but she has these very deep issues through, past incarnations, accumulated through past incarnations. And there should be some ways to resolve it. There's many helping professions like kinesiology or numerology or karmic astrology or other stuff, okay, even NLP, that you might use once you realize that this is the issue. It needs to be resolved somehow. And the only way to resolve it is to show much love towards the child, to try to love the child as much as you can, and try to understand her needs or his needs. It could be father and mother, by the way. So it's just or a boy child and the mother, and then the father feels totally excluded. So it could be in any number of ways. But the fact remains that this issue needs to be tackled. And in a way, you need to understand it's still the child that is helpless, because a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old is not able to provide for himself or herself. So you need to understand that the whole thing needs to be resolved from the child's point of view. After all, you are the grown-up, but it's not easy. I hope you can accept what I said. We will continue this later on. I will tackle the issue of love and hate soon, and what to do about it. So we haven't finished it yet. And thank you for listening. Bye-bye.